Hello and greetings to everyone. Today we are going to treat directed numbers. Directed numbers. By convention, we define upward movements above the ground as positive and downward movements below the ground as negative, while considering the ground level to be 0. Let's write this down. By convention, we define upward movements above the ground as positive. In bracket, we have heights, and downward movements below the ground as negative. In bracket, depths. The ground level is the normal level. The normal level in bracket 0. That means at the ground level it is 0. Therefore, a height of 210 meters above the ground is represented as positive 210, and a depth of 70 meters below the ground is represented as negative 70. Also, movements to the right are always taken to be positive, while movements to the left are always taken to be negative. We call both positive and negative numbers, directed numbers, directed numbers. This is simply because they continue in different directions on the number line. The negative numbers, they continue to the left, and the positive numbers continue to the right. Let's write it down. Positive numbers continue to the right, and negative numbers continue to the left. Let's draw a number line demonstrating the directed numbers, positive and negative directed numbers. Remember, a number line is simply a straight line that carries numbers equally spaced out. This arrow to the right hand side is simply telling us that the positive numbers continue. This other arrow to the left is simply telling us that the negative numbers continue. This is our 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. In between 0 and 1, there is a half, 0.5. You can just indicate it here. Between 0 and -1, there's a -0.5. You can indicate it above. Moving to the left, negative numbers continue. Moving to the right, positive numbers continue. Let's note this down. Note. First one. Positive numbers can be written without the positive sign in front of them. For example, you can write positive 1 as 1 without the positive sign, positive 2 as 2, positive 3 as 3, and so on. Next, hyphen under the note. When writing negative numbers, the negative sign must be written in front of the number. You cannot write down negative numbers without the negative sign. -1 is not the same as 1. -2.5 is not the same as 2.5. -24 is not the same as 24. We must take note of this. Let's take this heading, operations on directed numbers. We are going to see how to add, how to subtract, how to multiply, and how to divide directed numbers. We are going to start by noting this down. Note when we talk of the absolute value, it is simply the number without a sign. Take note of this. For example, if we take the number -4, the absolute value of the number -4, -4 has absolute value 4 without a sign. If you take the number +4, it has absolute value 4 without any sign. We take the first one, I, which is addition and subtraction. Writing this to add or to subtract directed numbers, we make use of the sign rules below. We make good use of these sign rules. The sign rules, we have the first one for A. When we have two plus signs as such, the resulting sign is plus. For B, when we have a plus and a minus sign, the resulting sign is minus. For C, when we have a minus sign and a plus sign, the resulting sign is a minus sign. And lastly, for D, when we have two minus signs, the resulting sign is a plus sign. We go by the margin, we take I, the various techniques to add or to subtract directed numbers. The first one, to add two directed numbers having the same sign, means they are either both positive or both negative. We add their absolute values and give the result, that is the sum of the absolute values, the common sign of the two numbers. Let's look at these examples. Here we have a positive 25 plus positive 10. This will simply be equal to, look at the two numbers, they have a common sign which is the plus sign. What we are going to do is we are going to write out the common sign which is positive, then we add the absolute values of the two numbers. That means we add the two numbers without any sign, 25 plus 10. This will simply be equal to positive 35. We go to B. For B we have negative 17 plus negative 14. This will be equal to the two numbers, they have a common sign which is a negative sign. We are going to write the common sign. Then we add the absolute values of the two numbers, 17 plus 14. And this will simply be equal to negative 31. We go now to 2i to add two numbers that have opposite signs. That means one is positive and the other is negative. We take the difference of their absolute values and the result, that is the difference of the absolute values, carries the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. Let's take examples on this. For A, we have a negative 11 plus positive 10. This will simply be equal to, look at the two numbers, they have different signs, negative 11, positive 10. If we take the absolute values, we are going to obtain 11 and 10. 11 is bigger than 10, so the result will carry the sign of 11, which is negative, with the negative sign. Then we take the difference of the absolute values, we take 11 minus 10. And this will simply be equal to negative 1. We go to B. For B, we have a positive 45 plus negative 72. This will simply be equal to, we have two numbers with different signs, positive 45 and negative 72. Taking the absolute values, we have 45 and 72. 72 is greater than 45. The answer will take the sign of 72, negative. Then we take their difference, 72 minus 45. And this will simply be equal to negative 27. We move now to 3i. 3i to subtract two directed numbers, apply the sign rules and make use of I or 2i to obtain the final answer. Let's take examples on this. For E, we have positive 36 minus positive 14. This will simply be equal to positive 36. According to the sign rule, negative positive here will simply be equal to negative. We're going to put minus 14. This will simply be equal to, you'll see we have two numbers with different signs, positive 36 and negative 14. If you take the absolute values, 36 is greater than 14, so the result will carry the sign of the larger number, which is positive. 36 is positive, then we take their difference, 36 minus 14. This will simply be equal to positive 22. We go to B. To B, we have negative 40 minus positive 11. This will simply be equal to negative 40. Negative positive, applying the sign rule, negative stays, minus 11. This will simply be equal to the two numbers. They have a common sign, which is negative. We are going to factor out the common sign. Then we add the absolute values, 40 plus 11. And this will simply be equal to negative 51. We go to C. C, we have negative 21 minus negative 33. This will simply be equal to, applying the sign rule, this will give us negative 21. When we have two negative signs, the resulting sign is positive. Negative 21 plus 33. This will simply be equal to, the two numbers have different signs. Taking the absolute values, we have 33 and 21. 33 is greater than 21. The result will be positive. We put the positive sign, then we take their difference, 33 minus 21. This will simply be equal to positive 12. We move now to 2, which is multiplication. To multiply any two directed numbers, we take the products of their absolute values and make use of the sign rules below to obtain the resulting sign, which is attached to the product of their absolute values. Let's write down the sign rule. For the sign rule, we have the first one for A. The product of two positive numbers, positive times positive, is equal to positive. For B, take positive times negative, it is equal to negative. For C, we have negative times positive, it is equal to negative. And lastly, for D, negative times negative is simply equal to positive. Let's look at some examples on this. Here we have negative 5 times positive 4, which is simply equal to, applying the sign rule, negative times positive gives us negative. We put the negative sign in front. Then we take the product of the absolute values, 5 times 4. This will simply be equal to negative 20. We go to B, negative 13 times negative 2 is simply equal to negative times negative gives us positive. We take the product of the absolute values, 13 times 2 gives us positive 26. We go to C. For C, we have positive 10 times negative 7. This will simply be equal to, applying the sign rule, positive times negative gives us negative. We put the negative sign. Take the product of the absolute values, 10 times 7. This will simply be equal to negative 70. We go to D. For D, we have a positive 11 times positive 3. This will simply be equal to, applying the sign rule, positive times positive gives us positive. Then we take the product of the absolute values, 11 times 3. This will be equal to positive 33. We go now to 3, which is division. Goes to divide any two directed numbers. Divide their absolute values and make use of the sign rules below to obtain the resulting sign which is attached to the quotient of the two absolute values. Let's take down the sign rule. For the sign rule, we have the first one, dividing a positive number by a positive number, the result is positive. B, dividing a positive number by a negative number, the result is negative. C, dividing a negative number by a positive number, the result is negative. And lastly, for D, dividing a negative number by a negative number, the result is positive. Now let's look at some examples on this. Take down examples. For the first one here, we have a positive 72 divided by positive 4. This will simply be equal to applying the sign rule, dividing two positive numbers, the resulting sign will be positive. Then we divide their absolute values, 72 divided by 4. This will simply be equal to positive 72 divided by 4 gives us 18. We go to B, positive 72 divided by negative 36 will simply be equal to applying the sign rule, positive divided by negative gives us negative. We divide the absolute values, 72 divided by 36. This will simply be equal to negative 2. We go to C. For C, we have to divide negative 18 by positive 6. This will simply be equal to, we are dividing the negative number by positive number according to the sign rule. The resulting sign will be negative. Then we divide the absolute values, 18 divided by 6. This will simply be equal to negative 3. We go to D. For D, we have to divide negative 144 by negative 9. This will simply be equal to, we are dividing two negative numbers. The resulting sign will be positive. Divide the absolute values, 144 divided by 9. And this will be equal to positive 16. So this is how we divide two directed numbers. The next thing we are going to look at is the order of operations. Please, you like the video, you share and subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much for watching.